那么咱们国讲上，但是年那么做呢，全部所大节给应该个头松线就松线去那么做先必须的凶。天边松线呢，个决定第一推的诺咯，在人个个人的诺咯呢，等你工队啊，没现在给这些人毛不进度，这个的他马下，你天边个松线能过来也锻炼，那么做先必须要因此的学因。
Thank you very much, Dean Tao and President Lee, for providing us with this opportunity for everyone to communicate and exchange ideas today. Just now, Dean Tao just mentioned Qingdao University, sharing his insights, especially regarding the psychological counseling and comfort provided after the Wenchuan earthquake. There were many touching stories. From my personal perspective, on one hand, I am interested in some exchanges, discussions, and seminars with universities. On the other hand, I am interested in doing something genuinely meaningful for charity, something that truly helps those in need. Additionally, I am also very interested in psychology. So I think that everyone present here today really shares some of the common interests as I do to some extent. So today, in this kind of setting, I will share whatever comes to mind with everyone about the topic in a casual manner. Today's topic is psychological comfort at the time of disasters. For everyone here today, I want to say, perhaps you have thought about this, or perhaps you haven't considered it before. Regardless, the world today, year after year, is experiencing more and more disasters with natural calamities occurring frequently. And for us, personally, there are also many kinds of disasters that can arise. Especially, I think, for many of the university students present, the life is, on one hand, a very carefree, relaxed, and joyful period of life. But on the other hand, university life is also extremely complex. It is a critical time when you have to face many challenges. I have always believed that if university students do not receive mental health education and guidance, they will face a great many challenges and problems in the future. Especially, university represents a transitional period in life. Why do I say something like this? Because after graduating from college, many people will inevitably have to face a multitude of challenges. They have to face society, face their families, and deal with all kinds of people in the world. Comparatively, college life is very simple, transparent, and peaceful. But once you enter society, if, for example, many university students during their studies have not developed psychological preparation and received healthy education, then when they enter the real world, you could say you have both social and family responsibilities. And social responsibilities are also very complex. It's not like university life, because very soon, if you become a doctor, for example, you'll have to deal with the relationships with hospital administration and patients. A solid mastery of medical skills is also required. If you graduate from a normal school and become a teacher, then you also have to manage relationships with school administrators, students, and parents, as well as issues related to teaching and so forth. At the same time, I think many college students may even start their own families soon. And when you start a family, you also take on dual responsibilities. You will soon become fathers or mothers, and at that point, there are all kinds of family and relatives issues that need to be handled. Also, during this period, you may need to search for certain positions in your own life, including your family's position, your career direction, and so on. If you don't have a solid foundation in mental health education at this stage, I've seen many young people who seem unable to get through it, on the verge of collapsing, about to break down. Because back in college, you never prepared for any of this. And when you suddenly enter society with countless problems from all directions falling on your shoulders, all at once, you find yourself at a loss. Many people at this point are unable to face it, unable to cope. For you, this is also a kind of disaster, because on your journey through life, you've already encountered a kind of rough crisis. These crises sometimes cannot be overcome. That's why I really hope that in universities and in high school, there should be some form of comprehensive, well-rounded psychological and real-life education in advance. This kind of life education is sometimes very necessary. It is a good try to step outside the school's curriculum or traditional education model. You can play a hypothetical role to have a rehearsal of your future life. For example, if you are the head and the breadwinner of a family, how would you handle everything? I've seen that in the United States and Germany, actually in elementary and secondary schools, including kindergartens, all have mental health classes as a part of their education. On one hand, you have to face your own eventual death. And you need to deal with the setbacks you will encounter in the future. This is a form of psychological education. There is also another kind of education that should be learned in school, which is training and preparation for dealing with many problems that occur in real life. But in most of our schools today, generally, they are merely platforms for spreading essential technology and important knowledge, while the lessons on personal conduct, interacting with others, showing filial piety, cultivating compassion, resilience, and patience within oneself. Actually, in these areas, many schools are probably still lacking or have blank areas. In such cases, I think these young people will inevitably face certain difficulties when they enter society. Therefore, I believe that all of you here, as was mentioned earlier, often go in person, whether it was during the devastating Wenchuan earthquake or to other places where there is an urgent need for emergency response to sudden disasters, and then provide counseling or psychological comfort to them. This is extremely important because in today's society, many people only care about their own lives, only care about their future, while seldom care about those around them who are unfortunate or those who need help. Very few people help out-of-school children or lonely elderly, even in their own families or lives, when encountering people who are experiencing real pain and hardship, they rarely offer any help to them. If our teachers lead the way, or if our students take the initiative to go to these places and do these things together, then seeing is believing, which is truly excellent. Because in today's world, and indeed in the future, it's possible that things like this will continue to happen. For example, earthquakes, tsunamis, storms, and all kinds of crises. Everyone here may be aware that many scientists now believe in the 21st century and the 20th century. Human destruction of nature has been extremely severe. Some scholars have even called it the so-called Third World War, as some experts have noted. Why do they call it the Third World War? Because humanity has basically destroyed the very home we live in. The homeland has already been ruined. In other words, our generation, in the pursuit of wealth, development, and resources, with such goals in mind, has basically emptied out many of the Earth's original resources. More than 90% of the world's resources have been used by about 10% of people in the entire human history. A great number of people living on this planet basically haven't considered the future of their descendants, their goals, or their well-being. Therefore, they believe that although World War I and World War II destroyed many buildings, mainly in Germany, Japan, and other countries, after these two world wars ended, many places began to rebuild their homes and return to normal. However, now people's development of nature and overall development, the devastating consequences caused by greed, cannot be easily or quickly reversed in a short period of time. In fact, because the greed and attachment are deeply rooted in people's minds, such destruction will undoubtedly continue in the future as well. Therefore, the scientist Stephen Hawking recently also said that human beings have now truly become the most terrifying, notorious, and truly irredeemable group in all of history. Based on this assessment from him, it warns us that many of our actions are in fact probably extremely frightening to us and to others. As a result, our planet is experiencing many natural imbalances caused by natural disasters. When there is natural imbalance, various kinds of external, natural, and man-made disasters will occur. So when these things happen, do we actually need to help? This help is not something that just one school, a group of kind people or philanthropists can accomplish. The awareness of the entire population needs to be raised. Only when the spirit of volunteerism, charity, and altruism among all people be enhanced, can we change some of the most frightening situations we face now. As a result, we often say nowadays, the charitable or volunteer spirit is also rather spontaneous and short-lived. For example, when disasters occur, people give help, or the help we offer is mainly material support or medical aid. But what is even more needed is that when people experience disasters, the psychological harm they suffer is even more severe. Therefore, there is a particular need for psychological mentors and many psychological counseling experts. We use various methods to help heal their hearts so that they can gradually come to understand the truth. At such times, of course, everyone here is well aware of this. You are from the School of Psychology. Helping them adjust their mindset through psychology is also extremely important. As for myself, I have studied and researched Buddhist teachings since I was young. I also hope to use some of the psychological guidance methods found in Buddhism, as well as mind training methods for them. Because in this way, it truly provides them with significant help. Of course, many people, whether they are students or those in need of help from all walks of life, not all of them necessarily have a faith. But even if they don't have a faith, it's important to let their minds settle down temporarily first. Once they have settled down, then we can proceed to help them further. A person's cognition is extremely important. Once our way of thinking changes, any crises, in fact, can actually be gradually transformed under the right guidance. When it comes to faith, I often think this way. Faith is a kind of spirit that runs in our bloodstream. Faith is an invisible, powerful force. Faith is truly an incredible power in our lives. Relying on faith as a guidance force, a fragile person can become very strong. Someone who was originally in great pain can, over time, become a truly happy person. Someone who was already on the verge of a mental breakdown can ultimately become positive and even become a sunny, optimistic person. Therefore, I think that when necessary, many students can use mind training methods taught in Buddhism. These methods for regulating the mind include, on one hand, some Zen practices. Of course, if you don't practice regularly and only seek help from the Buddha in times of crisis, it will be somewhat difficult. If you haven't studied or practiced these methods regularly, it will be challenging to help others in a pinch. I believe that many passionate psychologists, teachers, and students here today should make an effort to learn about the methods for training the mind in Buddhism. There are actually a great many ways to adjust one's mindset in Buddhism. If we can first set our mindset straight, then even if we encounter difficulties in life, any adversities, any suffering, or any disasters we face, we ourselves can face them calmly, thoughtfully, and sincerely. So I especially hope that the teachers and students who are present here today, in this very moment, will be able to take a careful look, even if just briefly, at some interesting and insightful books on Buddhism. When students are in school, it's actually a very good opportunity because at this time, there isn't the kind of life pressure that most people experience nowadays, nor is there the overwhelming pressure of work. Although there is academic pressure and some genuine concerns about the future, such as the pain of setting one's own direction in life, these difficulties, in fact, actually don't really affect us much. In this situation, reading is actually very important for you during student years. Nowadays, some students seem to have basically no interest at all in reading, and are even very tired of it when it comes to reading. There are some certain issues when it comes to studying. We believe that the student years are very precious. And in one's future life, they will be a stage of life that is especially worth remembering. So at this particular time, you should really be learning actively to prepare for certain problems that you will definitely face in your future life. The first problem is the various disasters, such as natural and man-made, that occur in the world. If something like this happens to you, the first thing to consider is how you would calmly deal with it. But many people think that nothing like that will ever happen to them at all. Just now, some people also said, I have always believed that those dangerous things will never happen to me. But that's just something people say. Actually, there is no reason for that. Because from the Buddhist point of view, life is impermanent. Many things around us in our lives are also impermanent. Because of impermanence, anything can easily happen in this unpredictable world. This point is extremely important. If we do not have a mind that accepts impermanence, Buddhism speaks of impermanence, and the secular world speaks of change, which is a completely normal phenomenon. The Buddhist scriptures say, in the world, whether great or small, no phenomena are permanent, nothing lasts long. All appears like a flash of lightning. I really like this verse. Why do I say this? Because everything that happens in the world, whether big or small, and all phenomena that exist, actually cannot ever have anything truly permanent anyway. Whether it is the feelings between people, or the buildings we often think of as everlasting and unchanging, or even the laws and regulations of a country, even everything existing in the world, if we look back, from the beginning of humanity up to now, and even everything that will happen in the future, it is impossible for anything to remain in the same state forever. It is bound to change. Just like a flash of light, it disappears very quickly. In the same way, in this world, our bodies will change, our families will inevitably change as well. As the years slowly go by, everything external will eventually vanish and fade away. At such times, some people who have not received this kind of education will feel pain in their hearts. Some even complain about others, asking, why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? But in fact, such reactions are unreasonable. So what I was saying is, in the future, when you encounter crises in your family, or when your relatives and friends pass away or experience suffering, or when you face all kinds of disasters in the world, on the one hand, we need to understand that all these phenomena are impermanent. As for the law of impermanence, if we have some training and knowledge in this area from a young age, then when we truly encounter suffering in our lives, we won't be so attached to it. Nowadays, many people, for example, when there are even slight problems in relationships between people, they feel extremely distressed. And some even immediately contemplate suicide. But in reality, these are very unwise and extremely foolish actions. Our lives are so precious, yet for some trivial matters, people are willing to give up even their own lives. Or, when they encounter certain situations, they are always unhappy, blaming others, complaining about the world. These are all very unreasonable. This kind of irrationality really stems from our education, perhaps because we haven't thought things through, and precisely because of that, in reality, it means that there is already a problem with our own mind. If your mind is troubled, then everything you do will go wrong. The world you exist in will also have problems. I once knew a college student, and this student used to say frequently, I keep thinking every day that some kinds of crises might happen in my family. For instance, what if my parents died or my older brother died? If that were to happen, how would I cope? I would have no way to handle it. I would just have a breakdown. Or I would become mentally ill. It's absolutely terrifying. But this was just his imagination. Truth be told, if something like that actually happened to him, it's very likely that the person would collapse on the spot. So looking at it now, many students and young people seem mature, carry a sense of dignity, and possess wisdom and talent. They also dress very well. But in reality, their minds are actually extremely quite fragile and emotionally simple. Sometimes, even the slightest thing in the world can easily affect them, and they can't accept it. Nowadays, when many young people are casually talking, eating, or playing games, some of them get upset because of a single sentence that seems not right. Sometimes, before the speaker realizes it, the other person has gotten angry or started crying. Some people don't notice at all. Sometimes, nothing bad was actually done at all, but the other person just can't accept it. Even a small smile can easily offend some people. Even a single simple sentence can offend others. Why are our minds so incredibly fragile? In fact, there should be some form of mental education in schools. Actually, the human mind can be either broad or narrow. You could say it can be both strong and gentle. The mind, depending on whatever kind of education and environment you use to consistently cultivate and train it, it can completely develop in that direction and continuously expand without limit. This is a unique ability of the mind. For example, people who practice meditation can go 7 days and nights without eating or drinking. Without distracting thought, they abide at peace. But many people nowadays just can't do this. Not to mention 7 days and nights, 7 minutes is hard. Their minds jump around like monkeys, constantly restless and unsettled. But that's because we haven't trained our minds. The mind can also become completely fragile if you spend all day watching TV or reading things that have negatively effect on the young's mindsets. Then one takes on the color of one's company. Your mind will grow weak and vulnerable. If you are in different environments, receiving very strong, tenacious, and positive influences, then positive effects will naturally and gradually appear. So when it comes to training the mind, as we often discuss, it seems everyone's mind is the same, but actually they are different. Some people truly possess profound wisdom, and this kind of inner power, while others, although they may appear wise on the surface, actually sometimes become confused when faced with problems. In this kind of situation, we really need a strong, reliable, and effective method of study and practice. No matter how difficult what you may encounter in life, you should approach it both calmly and with ease. You should still remain composed, even particularly in the face of death. This is the most fundamental, most essential, and most brilliant part of Buddhist psychology. Therefore, Buddhists, to a certain extent, when they encounter various kinds of obstacles and difficulties, they are indeed completely able to confidently face them. Moreover, in daily life, some young people and some others may not even dare to mention the word death at all. People are extremely afraid of death. Why is that? Our belief is when people die, they're like extinguished lamps. We grow up with this kind of mindset. If you grow up this way, whenever death is mentioned, you believe after people die, they cease to exist, nothing left. If I am gone, even though I used to be a healthy person, if there's nothing left, how terrifying that would be, one thing this way. But if you truly understand how to face death with ease in the end, then you can be very calm about it. Moreover, throughout Buddhist history, there have been many people who were incredibly peaceful at the time of death. Back in the Song dynasty, there was a master named Zongyuan of Zen Buddhism. Master Zongyuan became a monk from a very young age. And after ordaining, he lived as a wandering monk, traveling everywhere to visit teachers. His main focus of practice was the Universal Gate chapter. When he was 83 years old and approaching parinirvana, he informed everyone in advance, tomorrow, I have something truly special to do. Please prepare a special deer-topped seat for me. It is actually a very special kind of seat. He said, tomorrow, after the meal offering, I will need this seat. The next day, when all his disciples and followers had gathered together, he composed a verse and said aloud, in this world, there are hardly any people who live to 100 years old. Everyone will eventually become nothing more than dust in the grave. Now I am 83 years old, and I composed this mournful song to bid farewell to this body. He recited this verse, which roughly means, in this world, it is truly rare for someone to live to 100 years old. Even if you live to be 100, the human body, at 100 years, will ultimately become dust. Now I am already 83 years old, so today I compose this verse and leave it to you. After saying this, he left the world. You can think about this. Whether intellectuals or educated people in this world, when they finally die, can they face it so calmly? When the people around us pass away, whether it is in a hospital or anywhere else, they are in such terrible pain. Even university professors or academicians in the world, while they are alive, they guide thousands upon thousands of people. They believe themselves to be wise, talented, and so on. But when they truly face death, how do they confront it? Each one of us will also die one day. So when that time comes, how do we ultimately leave this world? Therefore, from my point of view, it is necessary for you to understand it as well within the Buddhist community. Actually, as you people from Qingdao say, in Qingdao there are many, many merits in this regard. You have such abundant resources here, and people's hearts are so pure, sincere, and kind, and so on. There is much to say about it. I fully acknowledge this, because in different situations, I have also personally observed your charity and your willingness to help others. In these respects, you are truly outstanding. And under such circumstances, Buddhism is also flourishing and growing here. I know Master Mingze, an elder monk, who is from Zhangshan Temple in Qingdao. Many young people might not know him. When I used to visit some universities, many wonderful things in the nearby temples, as well as the life stories of some important great masters, were not a concern to them, and some didn't know about them. But in any case, at that time, Master Mingze, whom I actually knew before, had come to Larongar to study Vajrayana Buddhism. It was probably close to 20 years ago, if I remember correctly. At that time, he was in his 60s or 70s when he began practicing the preliminary practices of Vajrayana Buddhism. Later on, after some time had passed, he eventually returned back here. At that time, our guru, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsho Rinpoche, gave him the name Yeshe Gyune. He spread the Dharma here with great accomplishment and was also the honorary president of the Shandong Province Buddhist Association. When he finally passed away, it should have been in 2012. At the time of his passing, in the morning, he was circumambulating the Buddha and prostrating. After finishing his prostrations, he sat on a lotus seat and passed away peacefully. We can reflect on this. What kind of remarkable and extraordinary actions anywhere in the world can possibly even begin to compare to this? In these respects, whether facing eventual death or facing suffering, we really need to have a faith. Actually, having no faith is fine too. Nowadays, many university students do not necessarily need to have a particular faith. But we need to understand that if we don't have faith, there is a certain profound difference in the strength that comes from deep within our heart. Earlier, I met many philanthropists who also shared this view. They believe that people with genuine faith, when doing good deeds, engaging in charity, or providing psychological comfort, the strength behind it is completely different. There are no self-serving conditions. It should be a complete and unconditional act of giving. In the future, regarding faith in Buddhism, perhaps everyone here should reconsider our perspective on it. It is your freedom not to have faith, And it is also your freedom to have faith. But as for what benefits faith has brought to the world, that is something everyone can observe. Our religious faith is actually a kind of belief that comes from deep within our hearts. But this belief is also, in essence, fundamentally a form of rational trust. Why do I say this? Because actually, specifically, for example, the teaching of Buddhism is to do all good things and avoid all evil. So doing all good deeds and refraining from all evil, this is the doctrine of Buddhism. But today, those who can truly achieve this, people who do good deeds and refrain from evil deeds, among all the people in the world, what kind of people are they actually? Of course, whether it's Buddhism or other religions, there may be some scholars or practitioners who have certain shortcomings, but these shortcomings cannot be attributed to the religion itself or its teaching. Religious ideas like these are indeed something our modern society greatly needs today. Nowadays, people's hearts are very cold, and relationships between people are becoming increasingly indifferent, including relationships between family members in different departments. In fact, people need a kind of care and compassion. And compassion, true compassion, is an unconditional, sincere kind of compassion. This is essentially the core of Buddhism. From a psychological perspective, this is called perspective taking. In other words, I put myself in your shoes, and you put yourself in mine. We look at each other and switch places with one another. Just like Confucianism teaches, do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire. If there's something you personally don't want to do yourself, it's somewhat unreasonable to make others do it. We, ourselves, need comfort and help from others. We should adopt the same attitude when dealing with others. Therefore, in schools in the future, what do we need to instill? We need the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism. So what are the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism? It is about not thinking of oneself at all and helping others. Of course, it is very difficult for many people here today to fully embody the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism to be truly, completely free of selfishness. But this direction, as an educational direction, is very important. If we have not received this kind of education from a young age, it is indeed very difficult. Therefore, what I want to share with everyone here is that people really need to have the courage and the necessary ability to face critical moments in life. If one truly possesses such abilities, then I think life becomes very interesting. In this regard, when we are facing the various challenges of life or unexpected crises that may arise in the future, we need to maintain a certain sense of calmness and composure. However, such calmness, I believe, can only be attained through Buddhist meditation and contemplative practices. It is difficult to get through other means. But this point is also very much widely acknowledged and respected in the worldly realm. Long ago, there was once a well-known and popular comic magazine, a publication that brought joy and entertainment to many readers. In order to attract as many customers as possible, this comic magazine organized an engaging and creative activity. How did this activity work? It was called The World's Last Moment. They invited people from all over the world. Anyone with drawing skills could participate in the competition. The central theme for all the entries was the last moment of the world. If a drawing successfully won the competition, the prize was enormous, which is $100,000. After this announcement was made, people from all over the world, with their different skills and artistic styles, began to participate. Some showed families hugging and weeping together when the world's last moment arrived. Such scenes were in the entries. Others showed themselves burning all their money and wealth on the street. There were also such dramatic and unforgettable scenes. Some showed people taking spaceships, escaping Earth in massive, fleeing to other planets in search of safety, and so on. But none of these won the prize. So, what was the winner like? The winner was a housewife. So, what was a scene that earned her the $100,000? After she finished washing the family's dishes at home, she was turning off the faucet. Her husband was sitting beside the dining table, quietly and calmly. There are two young children who have just happily started playing with their colorful building blocks at home. With this memorable scene, she ultimately won the prestigious award. Why did the judges choose this entry? Because at the end of the world, at the very last desperate moment, if this family could remain so calm and composed without being frightened or utterly distressed by such a terrifying event about to happen, that is something extremely difficult to achieve. That's why in the end, ultimately, all the prestigious awards went to her. From this story, from this case, we can reflect on ourselves. Sometimes Looking back at ourselves, everyone here, think about yourself. When you truly had to leave today, what would you want to do in your final moment? Or if something terrifying were to happen around us, be it the May 12th earthquake or the April 14th earthquake, when such truly terrifying disasters occur, how do you properly adjust your mindset? If you haven't received any training in this regard first, I'm afraid that when something like this really happens, it would be too late. In the world, there are people who are psychologically very strong, and there are people who are psychologically very fragile. No matter what, spiritual practice is truly very much needed in our lives. Regarding spiritual practice, I strongly recommend that you read more related materials. For example, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is the book, The Words of My Perfect Teacher. In this precious book, it first discusses topics such as the rarity of human birth and the impermanence of life, as well as what to do when you truly encounter some crises, such as taking refuge and so on. These teachings, no matter what kind of person you are very necessary. Some of you here, when you're about to take the college entrance exam, many people go to temples to pray to the Buddha, asking for blessings for success in the exam. Actually, through this behavior, it's clear to see that deep down, everyone inherently has some form of faith. It's just that the degree of faith is different. If you truly had no faith at all, then why would you often go to various temples to seek blessings for the college entrance exam? So, does Buddhism oppose seeking blessings like this? Not only does it not oppose it, but to varying degrees, it should be said that Buddhism fully acknowledges this kind of power and blessing. Of course, the true refuge in Buddhism is not about asking for wealth, promotion, or health. These are not the highest pursuits in Buddhism as a whole. So what is the highest pursuit? It is to benefit all sentient beings in the world who have a connection with us. This is the highest spiritual value in Buddhism. However, before you reach this level, if you just want your temporary wishes to come true, that is also very necessary. When you encounter disasters, you can recite Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. In fact, across the world, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's blessings and power are indeed incredibly strong. Through praying to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Amitabha Buddha, or Shakyamuni Buddha, it is true that what was originally the greatest danger in your life can be resolved at that time. This is not just a legend, nor is it merely an illusion. It is something real and significant. Certainly, if you don't believe it, that's also fine. It's just like some medicines in the world which are very effective, but people who don't trust the medicine might dismiss it with a single sentence. That is also, in every sense, your freedom. But to be truly objective from a scientific psychological perspective, when your mind calls out in a certain way, it will receive such blessings and power. Therefore, everyone present here today, when you inevitably encounter the most terrifying and difficult moments in life, it is particularly necessary to pray. The power of this kind of prayer is truly incredible. As someone who has studied Buddhist logic and philosophy for so many years, I have also explored various kinds of knowledge. In the process of exploration, I myself actually don't really acknowledge general superstitions or general miraculous power. However, I very much acknowledge that through prayer, one can accomplish their own wishes. For example, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, in the Han regions, people may not have been very familiar with the practice of 21 taras. But in Tibet, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, this practice is known by everyone. Whenever people encounter difficulties, they pray to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, or pray to 21 taras, or pray to Guru Padmasambhava. And it is true that after such prayers as these, the real effect of praying far surpasses that of current modern emergency centers or ambulances. Nowadays, if some ambulance services are not up to standard, it happens that by the time they formally show up, the matter has already been resolved. The true power of the three jewels is truly inconceivable. Of course, among those of you present, you can also freely explore this aspect. If you come to understand it this way, this too is part of traditional culture. Within traditional culture, there is clearly a spiritual dimension. This spiritual dimension cannot always be proven by material or objective means. But in reality, the inner subjective power and experience can be fully verified. So now, as science becomes more advanced, whether it's psychology or Buddhism, we should acknowledge both the technology and knowledge of modern science and also recognize the subjective power and the mind. If we completely lose our traditions and blindly follow only modern science, that is also an erroneous extreme. On the other hand, if we only focus on learning traditional things and reject all modern technology, that is a misguided path for us. Therefore, A wise person will care about the development of external material things while also paying attention to enriching their own inner world. A wise and mature person will care about the various scientific advancements that are currently taking place and happening throughout the world. But what they care about even more is the ancestral treasures passed down through generations. That is, the many highly valuable traditional cultures of our ancestors. It is necessary to combine traditional culture with modern knowledge, integrate external material things with inner spirituality, combine both research-oriented and practical-oriented approaches. Nowadays, these aspects cannot be separated. Currently, there are some teachers in schools who make judgments purely on a theoretical basis without any hands-on, practically operational practice. While some people in monasteries and Buddhist centers focus solely on practice, lacking theoretical understanding. As a result, theory and practice can easily become disconnected. In this situation, I'm afraid that we cannot truly understand the truth of life or our outlook on life and values. We may not be able to truly comprehend that. Nowadays, almost everyone these days has quite strong desires indeed. These desires are also closely related to the material world. As the material world changes in various ways, our desires keep growing as well. Changes in the material world actually cause the desires in our hearts to keep increasing. Once we realize our inner desires and moderate the desires a little bit, the external changes are not that significant. In reality, the environment we live in now, our surroundings, or the city, is mostly a result of people's desire. They are actually resources that we don't need at all. When I look at these modern big cities nowadays, I tend to think that high-rise buildings are actually concrete jungles. They're made of concrete, and they're basically like jungles. We humans living in these concrete buildings are like concrete worms, exactly the small worms in concrete in high-rise buildings. But there are also quite a few development zones where basically no one lives. This is all caused by human design. A lot of villas and buildings have been constructed here. But in reality, most of them are empty, which actually wastes a lot of our resources. It's not a waste of material resources, but also a waste of our valuable mental resources, as well as our time, energy, and so on. In our short lives, a lot is actually wasted. And even though you own a lot, what we actually get to enjoy is probably very little. Many people buy houses that they never live in for various reasons in their entire lives. I heard about someone who bought a very large villa, but he never lived in it. Later, when he became seriously ill and stayed in the hospital, he was taken to that villa at his last breath. They said that if he hadn't been given the chance to stay there even once, he might have been in great pain. So they brought him to the villa, but by the time they arrived, he had already breathed his last. In fact, the money and wealth that people desperately constantly seek, for the most part, are very much the same as this. Therefore, in this society, people often need awareness and a sense of observation to observe what they are doing and what others are doing. At such times, spiritual education certainly plays a significant role. If the mind truly receives proper and wise guidance along life's journey, then we will have real wisdom. And if we truly have wisdom, then the external material world will also appear much better. Well, then, I think that's all for today.
Venerable Khenpo Sodarye, greetings. Honorable President Li Ran, distinguished guests, dear friends. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is an auspicious day. Welcome to this precious gathering. The guest we have invited today is Khenpo Sodarye from Laronggar Five Sciences Buddhist Academy. It is a great honor to have Khenpo with us today to give us an explanation on how humanity can face disasters and the various difficulties we may encounter in life. Before the esteemed Khenpo Sodarye begins his speech, let's first invite Professor Tao Minda, Dean of our Psychology College, to give welcoming remarks.
Respected Khenpo Sodarji, Honorable President Li Ran, distinguished guests, dear friends, teachers, and students. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all having a wonderful day. Today, we are very honored to have invited Khenpo Sodarji to give us a lecture. Here, please allow me to represent the Normal College and the Psychology College of Qingdao University and everyone present to express our sincere gratitude, our deepest appreciation, and warmest welcome to Khenpo for coming. At the same time, I would also like to thank those who helped invite Kempo to our school, Red Cross leaders and friends. Thank you. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks and sincere appreciation to all the volunteers who helped organize this lecture. Today, we are honored to have invited Kempo, and I believe he will bring us more comprehensive, profound, and soul-touching guidance. As everyone knows, mainstream schools of Western psychology have incorporated a great deal of Eastern culture into many of their theories and practical techniques, especially the concept from Buddhist Zen. Many of these fundamental concepts align with Eastern culture and values. They have great public adaptability in China. There are also more and more psychologists in China who are influenced by the integration of Western psychology and Buddhism. They have begun to recognize the wisdom of Buddhism. As for the Buddhist community, Buddhism also needs to move beyond its traditional forms of dissemination and move toward the postmodern trends of modern society. Therefore, the integration of Buddhism and psychology is a great opportunity for Buddhism to serve the public in today's society. At the same time, the combination of psychology and Buddhism has also opened up brand new avenues for in-depth research in psychology. Kempo Sodage has profound experience in Buddhist teaching and practice within the field of Buddhism. He was one of the earliest Buddhist teachers in China to introduce psychology into Buddhist teaching in the Buddhist community. Today, we will have the opportunity to listen to Kempo Sodage's talk on psychological comfort at the time of disasters. I believe that the wonderful dialogue between Kempo Sodage and the many teachers, students, and guests will surely open up new horizons of thought for both Buddhist and psychological practitioners. Let us all look forward to and participate in today's inspiring lecture and discussion together. Here, on behalf of everyone present, I would also sincerely like to extend my best wishes to Kempo for good health and all the best. Now, let us give a warm round of applause to welcome Kempo Sodage to give us his lecture.